Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fanfiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
Minato and his wife Kushina both laid dying on both sides of their newborn son. Minato laid on the right as he repeatedly apologized for what he had just done to his beloved new son. Mere minutes ago the Kyuubi had broken out of his wife's seal and wreaked havoc on the village hidden in the leaves. A masked man had broken the seal and he used the Kyuubi to attack the village, killing hundreds in the process. As the Hokage of the village, it had been up to him to stop the masked man and stop the king of the Biju. Minato had managed to foil the masked man's plans, but the Kyuubi had been too strong for him to kill. So he had been forced to split the Kyuubi in half and sealed one half into himself, and the other into his new son. It's only been a few hours and I suck at being a dad. Minato commented weakly as he stroked his son's hair, so much like his own, and wept openly. Kushina was weeping as well. Her baby boy had just become the third Jinchuuriki to the Kyuubi no Yoko. She wept for the pain and suffering her new son was going to have to endure because of the accursed demon that was sealed in his stomach just like it had been in hers. She cried because she knew what it was like to be glared at and hated by everyone because of something she didn't want. But she had Minato. She found love to fill the hole that had been in her heart. Her son would have nothing. He would be all alone in the world. He would have no one to fill that hole in his heart. In a way she was angry with her husband, angry that he couldn't have found a better way, a way where her little Naruto wouldn't be so alone, but she knew that Minato didn't want this any more than she did. "I'm so sorry Naruto that we won't get to see you grow up," she sobbed heavily, spitting up blood as she did so. She looked at Minato. "Minkuan, what have we done? He's going to so alone. There won't be anyone to protect our little Naruto." She cried and sobbed. Not once in her entire life had she been this upset. Not even when she found out she was going to have the Kyuubi sealed inside her, and she couldn't believe she was this upset on the day that was supposed to be the best day of her life. Minato looked crestfallen as he stroked his son's hair, then a spark of what could only be hope ignited in his eye. "We may not be able to protect him, but maybe we can help him protect himself," he said as he shakily began to draw on Naruto's new seal with his life's blood. What do you mean?" Kushina asked hopefully. She'd give anything to make sure her new son was even slightly safer. Minato shakily drew on Naruto's stomach as he began to explain. "We may not be here to protect Naruto, but maybe we can give him the skills to protect himself. The seal I'm drawing will infuse our experiences and talents into Naruto so he can protect himself," Minato explained as he altered the seal on Naruto's stomach. Kushina's brow furrowed in confusion. "So our son will have our memories?" she asked confusedly, thinking that couldn't be healthy. Minato chuckled weakly. "No, he won't have our memories, but he'll have our experience in battles. He'll have the instincts of two veterans shinobi. He'll fight like we do because of what he will think is instincts, but it will be our experiences that make him have those instincts. He'll be incredibly talented in most ninja art because he'll unknowingly will have years of experience in the fields," Minato explained further as he began to finish up the seal. Kushina smiled weakly at her husband. Leave it to Minato to do the seemingly impossible to protect the people he cares about. She was also slightly happy that they could give their son even a small amount of protection from the cruel, hard, mean world. Kushina nodded as she grabbed Minato's hand and placed a hand on her son's head. "Naruto, don't be picky and grow strong. Make sure you bathe every day and stay warm. Also, don't stay up late. You need lots of sleep, and make friends. You don't need a lot of friends. Just a few, ones that you can really trust. I wasn't very good at it, but keep up with your studies and practice your ninjutsu hard. Remember, everyone has strengths and weaknesses, so don't get too depressed if you can't do something well. Respect your teachers at the academy. Oh, and this is important. It's about the 3 prohibitions for a shinobi. Be extra careful about lending and borrowing money. Put your mission wages into a savings account. No alcohol until you're 20. Too much can ruin your health, so drink in moderation. Another prohibition is women. I'm a woman, so I don't know too much about this, but all you need to remember is that this world is made up of men and women. It's only natural to take an interest in girls, but don't get hooked on bad women. Find someone like me. Speaking of the tree prohibitions, be wary of Jiraiya-sensei, you know. Naruto, from now on, you're going to face lots of pain and hardship. Be true to yourself. Have a dream and have confidence to make that dream come true. There's so much more I want to pass on to you. I wish I could stay with you longer. I love you. She finished, coughing blood as she did so. She smiled apologetically at her husband. Minato, I'm sorry I used up your time. Minato just shook his head and sent her a loving smile. Oh, it's okay. He looked at Naruto. Naruto, my message to you is, I guess the same as your nagging mother's. He said with a smile and received a chuckle from his wife. Kushina started to tear up again. Oh, I want to see him grow up so bad. She cried. Minato sent her a knowing smile. We will. I'm going to seal the last of our chakra in the seal as well so we can see Naruto again someday. Kushina smiled at her husband and nodded that she was ready. Both parents turned to the child between them and said, We love you, Naruto. Before the seal activated and took both their lives. Time skip. Naruto age 6. Naruto stood in the clearing at the academy like everyone else in his class. Today was their first day of taijutsu sparring with one another, and Naruto knew he wasn't going to do well. The academy teachers had been sabotaging his education from the beginning. They told him how to throw a kunai wrong, told him the wrong stances in taijutsu, told him how to form hand size wrong, placed genjutsus on his test. They were doing everything that they could to make sure he never became a ninja. If it wasn't for his strange instincts, he had no idea how screwed he would be. When they taught him how to throw a kunai wrong, he couldn't explain it, but he just knew it wasn't right. It was like his body was telling him that he wasn't doing it right, so Naruto altered his stance and grip until it felt natural, and when he threw the kunai, he got it dead center. After that, he just ignored everything the teachers tried to teach him. He wasn't even close to being an idiot. He knew that they were going to do everything in their power to screw him over, so Naruto simply just ignored their teachings. Like the kunai incident, he made hand size until they felt right, and with the test he dispelled the genjutsus on them and answered the questions easily. He had gone under a henge and went into the library and tried to find scrolls on taijutsu styles, but his taijutsu, however, he had not been able to fix. All the scrolls that deal with fighting stances other than the academy style were under lock and key in the genin and higher sections in the library. The only way to get into those sections was to be the rank of ninja of the section you were trying to enter. So Naruto had no style other than the bit and pieces of the academy style that he watched from the kids who were taught the correct forms. Naruto sighed as he scratched his sun-kissed hair. I'm so screwed. Maybe I'll get lucky and end up with a girl. Maybe then I can just overpower her. Naruto thought strategically. Admittedly, it wasn't an advanced, but for a 6-year-old. Naruto was broken out of his musings by Irika starting the first match between Shikamaru Naru and Chuji Akemichi. But sensei, I don't want to fight my friend. Chuji complained. He was a rather gentle soul and he hated the thought of harming anyone, much less a friend. Irika sighed as he explained the purpose of the spar. But you're not really fighting your friend Chuji. You're helping him get stronger. Remember that even the Hokage spar with their friends to get Irika's speech was interrupted by Shikamaru walking out the white circle that was the ring. Don't worry, Chuji, I know this isn't your kind of thing. The Nara said lazily. Irika sighed loudly as Chuji grinned at his friend. Thanks, Shikamaru. Guh, they're both so spineless. Ino commented and a young-looking Sakura glanced at her friend. You know them? She asked and Ino nodded sadly. Yeah, our parents know each other. Man, Shikamaru will never make it to Chunin. He's too lazy. Kiba commented, feeling slightly annoyed that he was robbed of seeing a good fight. I don't know, Inuzuka-san. Life is very long. Shino commented and Kiba sweat dropped at Shino's logical tone. Irika looked at his two unwilling fighters. Fine. But do the harmony symbol. Shikamaru looked surprised. Oh. I almost forgot. He said as he walked back and linked fingers with his friend. Good, now Sasuke Uchiha. Irika said, calling out the next contestants. As Sasuke walked into the ring, his fangirls screamed their support. Sasuke was the most popular due to his Uchiha status and the fact he was doing the best in class. And Naruto Uzumaki. The cheering stopped as everyone glared at the blonde and began to whisper insults about him, but they were loud enough that Naruto's sensitive ears caught what they were saying. Why is he even trying? He's not going to win. That's the boy my mommy told me to safety away from. What a freak. He should just give up. He's a monster. Naruto clenched his fists as he entered the ring. How desperately he wanted to prove them all wrong, but he knew he was no match for the Uchiha. You ready to lose, Dobe? Sasuke said arrogantly as he got in the interceptor fist stance, his family's taijutsu style. Naruto just sighed as he angled his body away from Sasuke. He didn't have any taijutsu style, so he didn't have a stance. Iruka looked at both contestants. Begin. He yelled. Sasuke and Naruto sprung at each other. Sasuke threw the first punch, aiming for a one-hit KO so he could brag, but the strangest thing happened. Naruto, by instinct, grabbed Sasuke's wrist and used his momentum to throw him over Naruto's shoulder. Sasuke landed on his feet, but he looked as surprised as Naruto felt. He had no idea how he just did that. It was like his body knew how to dodge, so his mind wasn't needed. Is it like with the kunai and hand size? He thought hopefully, maybe there was a chance he could win after all. Naruto crouched low and sprung at Sasuke. He was snapped out of his surprise when Naruto's fist hit him in the gut. Ignoring the pain in his stomach, he threw a left hook to hit Naruto in the jaw, but the blow was stopped when Naruto threw up his forearm and caught Sasuke's arm by the elbow. Acting on instinct alone, he punched Sasuke in the mouth like he was going to do to him, and as Sasuke stumbled back, he then delivered a frontal kick to Sasuke's stomach and knocked him out of the ring. Everyone watched in shock as Naruto managed to beat Sasuke. He looked like he was doing it with ease. Iruka smiled lightly. It seems Naruto had been practicing on his own. Winner, Uzumaki Naruto. He called out, pride evident in his voice. Naruto smiled, indescribably happy that he had just won. He couldn't believe it. Maybe now everyone would. Cheater! Sasuke's fangirls roared. They hurled other insults at him, and each one was worse than the last. They looked absolutely murderous. They refused to believe that Naruto had beaten their Sasuke-kun. Naruto looked at them in a sad way. I should have known that they wouldn't cheer for me. He thought sadly as he took off running towards the fence and hopping over it, crying a little as he did so. Sasuke's eyes followed the blonde that had just bested him. He couldn't believe he had lost to the dobe, and he was going to make sure he paid for embarrassing him like this. Naruto sat upon the Yandame's stone head for hours after the matches at the academy. This was his favorite place to come when he was upset by something the village had done to him. Naruto didn't know why they hated him so. They called him a demon and a monster. They said he killed their families and that he deserved the beatings, getting thrown out of stores, and the cruel glares. He didn't know why they did those things. He certainly didn't think he was a monster, but that didn't matter. The entire village hated him except for his Gigi and Iruka-sensei. Gigi was the Hokage of the village that looked after Naruto as much as he could. He was like the grandfather that he never had. Iruka-sensei was the only teacher that didn't try to sabotage Naruto's future, but because how the academy was laid out, he only had his class once a week until his final year in the academy. They were the only ones who could stand to be around him. He asked them why they hated him, why they called him a demon, but they always dodged the questions. Naruto gazed down at the village below him in sad anger. Why couldn't they see that he wasn't a monster? That he never did those things that they accused him of? Why couldn't they see that he was just a normal 6-year-old boy? Naruto sighed as he thought about his match with Sasuke earlier. He thought since he had won, people would start to respect him a little. Maybe even want to be friends with him or include him in the occasional game. In hindsight, he realized he was a fool. He should have known that he would never gain the respect of his peers. And now everyone was going to hate him more because he had hurt the stupid team. It had been quite the shock when he had won, and he still didn't understand how he did it. His body just knew how to react before his gifted mind had a chance to process what was happening. Naruto was incredibly smart, not quite on par with Nara, but he was close, and for the life of him he couldn't figure out how his body knew what to do. He thought about telling Gigi about his odd instincts, but he had decided against it. What if that was the final straw with the Hokage and he would start to look at Naruto with those cruel, harsh, hateful eyes? Naruto didn't think he could stand it if Gigi looked at him that way. Naruto brushed away a tear that was beginning to form in his eye. I won't cry. I'm not some crybaby. Naruto vowed as he continuously wiped away the tears that were escaping from his eyes despite his vow. He didn't show it, but Naruto was really lonely. He joked around and pranked to hide it, but deep down, Naruto all alone. He had Gigi and Irika-sensei, but he was terrified that he would mess up and they would end up hating him too, so he couldn't really rely on them. He just wanted one person that he could trust fully and didn't have to fear the cold sting of rejection from them. So, despite all of his attempts and vows, Naruto cried on top of his idol's head. Hey brat! Flashback 6 hours ago. Hinata watched Naruto jump over the academy fencing with a worried expression. Naruto had looked really upset that everyone accused him of cheating. Are you all right, Sasuke-kun? Did that cheater hurt you? Sakura asked her crush worriedly as she went to go pick him off the ground. Sasuke slapped her hand away. I'm fine, he said gruffly. Sasuke's mind was reeling. How did he lose to the dobe? The loser of their class? He just knew he was going to get an earful from his father when he got home. Sakura looked hurt but complied with his wishes as Sasuke picked himself up. Irika sighed as he watched Naruto's retreating form. He was worried about Naruto. He looked incredibly hurt that everyone had accused him of cheating when it was blatantly obvious Naruto had won with his own skill. Naruto's moves had really surprised Irika. They certainly weren't academy style. He was going to ask Naruto where he learned them, but he had run off before he had a chance to. Irika looked disappointedly at the rest of his students, who were still trash-talking Naruto, and made the hand size for his signature jutsu. Shut up. Next contestant, he yelled, using his big head jutsu. After school, Hinata went looking for Naruto. She wanted to comfort the blonde and tell him that she didn't think he cheated, but she knew she would just stutter and faint. But she wanted to try and help Naruto. Naruto didn't know it, but he played a major role in the young Hyuga's life. Hinata idolized Naruto. He was everything she wished she could be. Confident, happy, endurance, the list went on. She'd give anything for her idol to notice her, but sadly he never did. She was the opposite of Naruto. Shy, sad, wrecked with self-doubt, and she would always cry if she did something wrong. Hinata walked up the stairs to the top of the Hokage monument, Naruto's usual hideout when he was sad or upset. Also unknown to our favorite blonde, Hinata would occasionally follow Naruto. Some part of the reason why was she wanted to know how he managed to endure everyone's hateful glares, and the other part was she enjoyed being near Naruto. He had a soothing presence that instantly calmed her down when she was upset. Like she thought she would, Hinata saw Naruto sitting upon the yandame's head. She watched him, trying to gather up the nerve to walk up and talk to him. Then minutes turned to hours as she tried to make her body move. Then she saw a sight she'd never thought she'd see. Naruto was crying. It broke Hinata's heart to see her hero so hurt to the point of tears. I have to move. Naruto-kun needs me, she thought to herself, and the moment she took a few steps in his direction, two men suddenly appeared. Back to Naruto. Naruto turned around slowly and saw that it was two Chunin ninja that had been talking to him. Yeah? He asked as he wiped away any leftover tears. The Chunin on the left asked, well, today we heard that you had managed to beat up Sasuke Uchiha in a spar today. Is that true? He asked. Naruto hesitated, then nodded. For some reason this guy was giving him the creeps. The two Chunin sent each other a sly smile. In that case we need you to come with us. The one on the right said with a disarming smile, but it had the exact opposite effect on Naruto. He had seen that kind of smile before and it always ended in him getting hurt. Naruto got up slowly, giving them the impression that he was complying before he sprung into action. He leapt forward and punched the one on the right in the balls and grabbed a kunai from his holster before throwing it at the second Chunin before turning to run away. "Oh no, you don't, you demon!" the uninjured Chunin said as he grabbed Naruto by the hair and yanked him back. Naruto yelled out in pain as he hit the ground. The Jonin looked over at his friend, who was holding his private region and glaring at Naruto with a pained expression. "You alright?" he asked as he heavily rested his foot on Naruto's chest. "Yeah, I'll be fine. I'll be even better when I make him pay for it later 10 times over." The injured Chunin responded as he delivered a swift kick to Naruto's ribs. "Alright, let's get out dash. Leave Naruto-kun alone." Hinata yelled out as she got into her gentle fist stance. She was scared of the two Chunin, but she had to be brave to save Naruto. Naruto looked over and saw it was the weird girl in his class that fainted a lot. He gritted his teeth in pain as the Chunin dug his heel deeper into his ribs. "What are you doing? Get outta here. I'll be fine," he called out to the pale-eyed heiress. The two Chunin shared a sly grin. "Ah, is the little Hyuga gonna save the little monster?" the injured one mocked. Hinata stood her ground, ignoring their taunts and Naruto's pleas for her to run. She had to save Naruto, no matter the cost. The Chunin looked back at Hinata and grinned again as he delivered a devastating backhand to Hinata, causing her to go flying. Hinata landed on her head, causing her to heavily bleed, then crumpled into a beat-up ball. Her face hurt where she was slapped and her head really hurt where it was split open, but Naruto-kun was in danger. Hinata struggled to force herself back on two legs. The Chunin that had hit her sneered as he kicked her legs out from underneath her. "Just stay down, you Hyuga brat. You won't win," he said as he delivered a kick to her ribs. Hinata cried out in pain as Naruto struggled to get from underneath the boot that pinned him. "Don't hurt her, you son of a bitch," he screamed. The Chunins rolled their eyes as the Chunin that had been hurting Hinata picked her up and looked her in the eyes. Hinata looked fearfully as into the man's cold onyx eyes before they turned red with 3 small tomos. If Hinata wasn't barely conscious, she would have been surprised that members of the Uchiha clan were hurting her and Naruto. "What are you doing? Now she'll know who we are," the Chunin standing on Naruto said in an annoyed tone. His partner didn't think that through. "Shut up. I know what I'm doing," he snapped. He looked deeply into Hinata's eyes. "You won't tell anyone about what happened here. You'll tell your family that you fell down the stairs to explain how you got hurt. If you tell anyone, I'll kill you," he threatened. Hinata looked terrified, but the Chunin ignored that as the tomos in his eye began to spin. "Now, sleep," he commanded, and Hinata drifted into unconsciousness. He tossed Hinata aside like yesterday's trash and turned to his friend. "Now, let's have some fun with the demon for shaming our family," he said as they both shunshined outside the village. Hours later with Hinata. Hinata woke hours later. She was all alone in the night's darkness. Dried blood from her head wound covered a third of her face and her ribs really hurt, but she forced herself on 2 legs. She had to help Naruto-kun. Sure, the Uchiha's threat terrified her to the point where words failed her, but the Hokage always said that you have to be willing to sacrifice for the ones you care about. That was the will of fire, the ideal that made Koona great. Even though she was incredibly young, thought she understood the ideal. When her family would call her trash and make fun of her, she would just cry about it. But now that Naruto was in danger, she had the strength to do what she thought was right, and she knew saving Naruto was the right thing to do even though it could cost her her life before she had a chance to live it. Hinata knew she stood no chance against the 2 Uchihas, so she went for help to the only person that would care if Naruto was hurt. She ran as fast as she could to the Hokage's tower. With Naruto. Naruto screamed soundlessly. He had lost the ability to scream in pain hours ago, his throat raw from constantly screaming as the 2 unnamed Uchihas tortured him to the edge of human endurance. He should have died hours ago, but his ability to heal had prevented him from embracing death. He cursed his ability, he just wanted the pain to end. He didn't care if it was because someone saved him or he died. "You had enough yet?" one of the Uchiha asked in a sadistic tone. Naruto nodded his head yes, desperate for the pain to end. The same Chunin grinned at Naruto in sadistic glee, as he pulled a knife from a sheath. Naruto peeked open an eye and saw it was a skinning knife. Claude dread filled Naruto, please, someone, anyone, help me. With Hinata. Hinata barged through the Hokage's door, completely ignoring the receptionist, Hokage-sama. She yelled as she barged into the room. Hinata? Hayashi, Hinata's father, asked in confusion. Hinata stopped and looked at her father in surprise, then she noticed that the Hokage's office was filled with clan heads and the civilian council. Feeling slightly embarrassed, she tried to sink into herself before she remembered that Naruto-kun needed help. Hokage-sama. Someone kidnapped Naruto-kun. She shouted out desperately, hoping that the Hokage would do something. Hiruzen Sarutobi froze for a moment. What happened, child? The god of shinobi asked in a reassuring tone. The girls looked like she was on the verge of passing out. Hinata began to tell him, and the councils, what happened. Hayashi was impressed with his daughter. Not only did she try to take on two Chunin, but she didn't stutter once during the urgent story. As she finished, Hiruzen stood, dog, weasel, on command. The two A and BU captions reveled themselves in the center of the room. Gather your teams and any other ANBU or ninja you can find and find Naruto at any costs. The two ANBU nodded before disappearing. Hiruzen then turned to Fugaku Uchiha, the clan head. I will asking you this once, Fugaku. If you lie to me about this, I will ruin you and your clan. Did you order the kidnapping of Uzumaki Naruto? He asked in a bone-chilling tone. Fugaku met the Hokage's glare with one of his own. How dare this man threaten him? He was the head of the Uchiha clan. The most prominent clan there is, and he deserved respect. No. I knew of my son's loss to Naruto, but I have punished my son accordingly. I gave no order to harm Naruto. It is unlikely that it was even members of my clan. The girl must be mistaken or lying. He responded in a cold tone. Struggled saying that monster's name. It was because of that demon that his clan wasn't getting the respect it deserved since the attack. Before Hinata could protest, she was doing neither. Her father responded to Fugaku's claims. Fugaku-san. I would not recommend accusing my daughter in such a manner. Doing so could have consequences. Hayashi said in a hard tone. Enough. Hiruzen said sternly. He looked at Hayashi. We are in a crisis. Naruto-kun has been taken by someone, Uchiha or not. This is not the time to argue. He commanded. He looked at Fugaku. Hiruzen searched Fugaku's eyes for deceit. He found plenty of anger and malice, but found no sign that he was lying. He nodded. I am ending this meeting. Everyone leave save for Hayashi and his daughter. He barked. When the room was empty, both men turned to the small Hyuga. Hinata, what you did was incredibly brave. The Hokage said as he eased Hinata to a chair to sit down. The poor girl looked like she was about to kneel over any second. Hayashi nodded with the statement, you did very well, Hinata, he praised. They may have been simple words, but to the young heiress, they meant a lot to her. Hinata smiled lightly. Thank you. She said happily. Both men nodded. Now let's get that head wound checked out, shall we? It looks rather nasty. The Hokage said. With ANBU. Kakashi and a young Itachi raced through the forest at high speeds. It had taken them a couple of minutes to summon their teams and organize the search parties. Kakashi's mind was wrecked with worry for his sensei's son. Even though he had never actually talked to the blonde, except for the times he had reassured him after a nightmare on one occasion, Kakashi was fiercely protective of Naruto. When he was born, he was going to treat him as a brother because in a way, he would be. Minato had been like a father to him after his had taken his own life, so, indirectly, Naruto would have been a little brother to him. After the Kyuubi attack and the death of his sensei, Kakashi had raised complete and utter hell to get custody of Naruto. He deserved to have a family that loved him, but the councils, both shinobi and civilian, had stopped him at every turn. They stopped him because it wasn't fair that the Hatake clan got custody of the village's Jinchuuriki when no other clan did. He had nearly gone on a rampage when the councils had made it official that he would never get custody of his little brother. It had taken the combined efforts of Guy and the newly returned Asuma to keep him from raining hell on the village. When it was clear that he couldn't protect Naruto in the daylight like family should, he had gone to the Hokage and asked, closer to demanded, that he be placed on Naruto's protection detail so he could protect him from the shadows. The Hokage agreed, but on the conditions that he couldn't kill everyone who glared at Naruto and he could never speak to him. The god of shinobi knew that Kakashi wouldn't be to refrain himself from leaving the village with Naruto in tow if he had gotten to really know his little brother. Kakashi had been upset that he couldn't talk to his little brother, but he had managed to bargain with the Hokage that he could get to be Naruto's Jounin sensei when he became Genin. How much further? Kakashi asked Itachi in an impatient tone. Not much further, but it may take some time to break through the genjutsus around the shack. Only those who specialize in torture in the Uchiha clan know the exact location of the shack. So keep an eye out. Itachi answered. The said shack was a specialized torture room that the Uchihas used when they had found an enemy trying to steal clan secrets. It had everything in your worst nightmares in it for those who weren't Uchiha, and Itachi had a suspicion that that's where his clansmen had taken Naruto. They arrived at the approximate location of the torture shack and immediately began to dispel genjutsu after genjutsu to reveal its hiding place. Minutes went by before they had broken through the last genjutsu and saw the rundown shed. They heard the high-pitched scream that could only belong to a child in immense pain. Abandoning a lifetime of training, Kakashi leapt forward and kicked the door in. His only thoughts were of saving his younger brother. The two Chunin looked surprised at the sudden intrusion. They had been in the process of skinning the demon alive. It was their third time repeating the process because Naruto healed so fast. How did you ga? The Chunin on the right began, but he was cut off by Kakashi's Chidori piercing his heart. Kakashi threw the now dead Uchiha aside like yesterday's trash before he began to unhook Naruto from a blood-soaked table as Itachi dealt with his kin. Hey, don't cry, Naruto. It'll all be okay now, the bad men can't hurt you. Kakashi tried to comfort the boy as he unstrapped him. As soon as he undid the last strap, however, Naruto jumped up and dashed out the door as fast as he could. He was in too much pain to think clearly or to understand the man's words. He simply knew he had a chance to escape the awful room and he took it. Naruto ignored the pain in his raw legs as he sprinted as fast as he could. He had been in more pain than that by far, so he could endure a little more if it meant escape. Naruto! Kakashi yelled as he chased after the terrified boy. Naruto was too far gone to listen, but in his heavily injured state, he was no match for the Jounin's speed. Kakashi landed in front of Naruto, a few yards away, and he skidded to a halt in front of the masked man. Naruto, I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. Kakashi said, hoping to calm the boy, but Naruto wasn't listening. He was in too much pain. Despite his skin rapidly regrowing, he was still in massive amounts of mind-numbing pain. He could still feel where he was skinned alive, where they burned him, and so much more. When he saw Kakashi in his way, instead of seeing a savior, he saw someone who was trying to bring him back to that room. Naruto sprung forward, raising a scalpel that he had swiped as he ran through the door, and charged Kakashi in a zigzag formation. When he reached the masked man, he tried to swipe at his throat, but Kakashi stooped it by catching Naruto by the wrist. Stop! Kakashi's pleas for the boy to calm down were interrupted by Naruto roundhousing his ribs. Kakashi grunted in annoyance as he pinned the boy's leg to his body. He moves like sensei. Kakashi thought in surprise. Minato Namikaze had developed his own taijutsu style. He was an orphan, so he had no clan techniques that relied on speed and being unpredictable. Naruto didn't stop there. He threw a punch, only for Kakashi to dodge it. Naruto used his free leg and used it to kick away from Kakashi. Naruto was panicking. He couldn't go back in that room. No matter the cost, he was getting away. Naruto took a breath and in blind panic, he gave into instinct. Naruto charged Kakashi again, but this time he threw the scalpel as a distraction. Predictably, Kakashi dodged, but it gave Naruto the opening he needed. With a war cry, Naruto charged a beautiful spiraling ball in his right hand. He had no idea how he did it, nor did he really care. Kakashi's eyes widened underneath his mask. How in the hell was a 6-year-old boy using the Rasengan? Kakashi shoved the thought to the side for later. Right now he had to deal with a 6-year-old in possession with his sensei's jutsu. Kakashi grabbed Naruto's wrist and yanked it towards the ground, causing the incomplete Rasengan to implode on itself before exploding. Both Naruto and Kakashi were blown backwards by the explosion. Naruto landed on his head much like Hinata and got knocked out as Kakashi landed on his feet with practiced ease. Kakashi walked towards Naruto with a sense akin to awe filling him. He had just used sensei's jutsu. It was incredible, it was indescribable how amazing what Naruto had just done. Kakashi wondered where Naruto could possibly learn the high-ranking jutsu, but he couldn't think of anyone. There were only 3 people that could use the technique, and that was Sensei, Jiraiya-sama, and himself. None of which had taught him the jutsu. Kakashi figured he'd have to ask him when he woke up. He looked around for his partner and found no sense that he was anywhere nearby. Flying through a few hand signs, Kakashi used a Doton jutsu to rearrange the earth until it looked as it did before Naruto's imperfect Rasengan. He wanted to keep Naruto's secret to protect him from Danzo and anyone else who wished Naruto harm. Danzo was already pestering the Hokage to let him turn Naruto into a mindless weapon. If he got word of this, his pestering would only worsen, and if the civilian council heard about it, they'd likely call for Naruto's execution for besmirching the Yandame's memory. Bunch of ignorant bastards. After he finished destroying evidence, he picked Naruto up bridal style and noticed just how light Naruto was. "I'm so sorry, little brother," he thought before he shined to the hospital. Naruto woke to the sharp smell of medicine, alcohol, and hypodermic needles filled his lungs. Opening his eyes, and wincing at the bright light, Naruto confirmed that he was where he thought he was. The hospital. He blinked slowly in confusion. The last thing he remembered was the man who was trying to bring him back to that room. Then everything exploded before turning black. Naruto froze in terror when he was blindsided by the memories of what happened in that room. He tried to force the memories away, but they surfaced like a sea beast rearing its ugly head. A sob escaped Naruto's lips before he crushed the tears that were attempting to escape from his eyes. "I'm not crying. I will never cry again," he vowed, and unlike before, he managed to push back the tide of tears. Taking deep breaths, Naruto pushed himself upwards into a sitting position. He felt completely fine other than the phantom pains. He just felt nauseous. He heard the door open and saw that it was the Hokage. "Ah, Naruto-kun, I see you're already awake," Hiruzen said hesitantly. He had heard Kakashi and Itachi's reports on what happened, minus what Kakashi had omitted, and his heart went out to his surrogate grandson. No one should have to endure the horrors that had gone on in that cursed room, least of all a child that couldn't defend himself. Unlike Kakashi, Itachi had spared the second Chunin, and he had been interrogated by Anko and himself personally. Even Anko had been sickened when she heard the things that they did to Naruto, and she was as twisted as they come. Hiruzen had ordered the man to be executed, much to the outrage of Fugaku, but he had no choice but to comply with Hiruzen's ruling since he was under his jurisdiction. Hiruzen had wanted to do more, much more, but his hands were tied. Fugaku claims that he didn't order the 2 shinobi to do those things to Naruto and claims that they were acting on their own free will, and without proof that he was lying, Hiruzen could take no action against the Uchiha clan as a whole. Naruto looked at Hiruzen with a 1,000-yard stare. With eyes that belonged to shinobi that had seen one too many battles, eyes that did not belong to a child. He felt a tidal wave of shame and failure rise within his chest as he looked into Naruto's dull eyes. His eyes lost the innocence in them and a large portion of the warmth that had been in there. He knew in that moment he had completely failed his late successor. Naruto followed the Hokage as he sat down in the chair with his eyes. He showed no outward emotion, but on the inside he was getting agitated that the Hokage was sitting so close to him. This was new to Naruto. He had always looked forward to Jiji's company before. Hiruzen looked at Naruto with a concerned look. "How are you feeling, Naruto-kun? Do you wish to talk about What happened? He asked, hoping the boy wouldn't keep what happened to him bottled up. Naruto shook his head. I'm fine. He said in the same voice as he always used, but for some reason it sounded different to the Hokage. More mature, more world-weary, but maybe it was to be expected. Naruto hesitated, remembering what had happened in the room. He wanted to talk to Gigi about it, but for some reason he felt afraid. He was afraid that Gigi would finally realize that Naruto was too different from the rest of the village to be around. He was terrified that if he told him what had happened, then Gigi wouldn't love him anymore. He also remembered what had happened before he was taken and how Hinata had valiantly tried to rescue him. Is Hinata-chan okay? She was beat up pretty bad when she tried to rescue me. Naruto asked, concern replacing the sad look on his face. Hiruzen blinked and felt love for the boy surge. He had just been put through some of the worst torments imaginable, but he was concerned about the brave young girl that had tried to save him. In that moment, Naruto looked identical to Minato. He smiled at Naruto. Yes, she is doing just fine, Naruto-kun. She had a concussion and required a few stitches, but that is all. He said to a relieved-looking Naruto. He didn't know what he would have done if she had died trying to save him. The Hokage chuckled and earned a questioning look from Naruto. What's so funny? He asked. The Hokage chuckled again. You just reminded me of someone, is all my boy. Naruto, curious of who he had reminded Gigi of, asked, who? Hiruzen debated lying to Naruto, but he had already suffered enough. He refused to add on to it simply because he wanted to avoid a conversation about the boy's father. You just reminded me of the Yondaime. He said with a smile, amused with the look of shock on Naruto's face. Really? He asked in a disbelieving tone. He couldn't believe he had anything in common with his idol. Hiruzen nodded, yes. Do you wish to hear how? Naruto nodded. Hiruzen figured as long as he didn't name any important figures he could tell Naruto about his idol. A long time ago, at the beginning of the Third Shinobi War. This was also before young Minato had become Hokage or invented the jutsu that gave him the moniker, Kahona's Yellow Flash, the Hiraishin Jutsu. When the war began, Minato was a jounin in charge of the mission of taking over and holding a bridge that would give us access Kumo for a sneak attack. Minato took over the bridge easy enough. He was immensely powerful for someone so young. However, he suffered losses and only had himself and 3 other jounin holding the bridge. After the attack, Kumo was outraged that Koona opened up a route so we could attack them, so they responded by sending out several platoons to retake the bridge. They aimed to humiliate us, showing us that any ground we take can be taken back with ease. Minato found out about the platoons as he scouted ahead with his toad summons. When he realized that the enemy was going to try to retake the bridge, do you know what he did? Naruto shook his head, completely captivated by the Hokage's tale. Despite Naruto's traumatic experiences a few days earlier, he was still a 6-year-old that enjoyed hearing a good story. And the fact it was about his hero made it even better. He chose to stand his ground. He knew how valuable the bridge was, and he knew if they retook it then it would have been 10 times harder to take it a second time because they would have more ninja guarding it. He ordered his men to prepare for battle and he sent a messenger toad to Koona for reinforcements. The enemy arrived 2 days before the reinforcements did, but Minato and his team held the bridge like the world depended on it. They were outnumbered hopelessly, but they kept fighting. They used jutsu after jutsu after jutsu, even after they were exhausted from depleted chakra. However, as the day wore on, they went down to 3 jounin, then 2, until it was only Minato left holding the bridge against a third of a platoon. He was heavily wounded and was on the verge of oding from taking too many soldier pills, but he still fought on. He refused to let his comrades' sacrifices be in vain, so he held the bridge for an entire day all alone. He pushed back wave after wave of enemy ninja all by himself, and by the time the reinforcements got there, only a third of the original amount of enemy ninja remained. Kumo was very angry that they weren't able to retake the bridge, and they decided that if they couldn't have the bridge, then no one could. Naruto felt a pang of fear for his hero but said nothing. The reinforcements arrived and treated Minato for his wounds, but while just about everyone was asleep, the Kumo ninja snuck in and placed explosive tags on the bridge. Naruto clenched the sheets, eagerly anticipating what would happen next. Hiruzen smiled slightly as he saw this but continued. In the middle of the night, Kyuubi detonated the explosive tags and immediately the bridge was demolished. Luckily not many of our ninja were harmed by the initial blast because they weren't camped on the bridge, but large pieces of debris rained on their nearby camp. Minato, even though he was heavily injured, saw a large piece of debris that was going to land on a red-headed ninja. With speed that he's known for, he pushed her over and chose to let the debris fall on him instead, protecting the red-headed kunoichi. The debris broke several of young Minato's bones and he passed out due to blood loss after he and the kunoichi were safe. He awoke days later and the first thing he asked me when he woke was if the kunoichi was okay, even though he had just been put through the ringer. You reminded me of him not only because your first concern was of another but also because like you. Minato was also an orphan. Naruto's eyes went wide at that. While everyone knew about the Yandame's achievements, not many people bothered to learn how he got started. Most assumed that he was from a small unrenowned clan, but Naruto never would have thought that he was an orphan like him. Really? He asked in a disbelieving tone. The Hokage nodded. Yes, he was very much like you, Naruto-kun. Almost nobody believed in him. Naruto definitely couldn't believe that. Who in their right mind doubt the man who became the Yandame? Hiruzen chuckled at Naruto's ridiculous expression before continuing, yes. Nobody believed that he would ever amount to anything. They all thought he was unreliable or he could never become strong because he didn't have a clan. But he never let that get to him. No matter what they did or said, he kept training and training. He used their doubts as fuel and well, you know the result. Hiruzen finished, hoping that his story would inspire the boy to look past what had happened. Naruto was quiet. It was easy to draw parallels between the Yandame and himself. He could see what Gigi was doing. Naruto looked down at his hands and thought, he wanted to do what the Yandame did. Ignore the pain and the doubts and use them as fuel to continue on and do something great. Then he began to think about how he had always wanted to be like the Yandame, so why couldn't he just look past it? If the Yandame could do it and become one of the greatest heroes ever, so why couldn't he? And he had even gone through worse than the late Hokage, so that meant that he had even more fuel than he did. He could become stronger than the Yandame. Hiruzen felt a wave of pride swell in his chest as he saw a determined glint return in Naruto's eye. They no longer looked as dull as they had been mere seconds ago, though it was true that they still weren't as bright as they were before, but considering what the child had gone through, it wasn't surprising. I'm gonna surpass the Yandame Gigi. Just you watch. Naruto exclaimed before jumping out of bed and through the window. Luckily he was on the first story. He felt much better now and was eager to start his training, but first he had to stop by his apartment. The Hokage chuckled at Naruto's antics and left the room, but before he could leave the hospital he was approached by a doctor. Hokage-sama. Could I possibly have a moment of your time? I think there's something you should see in Naruto's chart. The doctor said in a slightly urgent tone. Hiruzen looked alarmed and held out his hand and quickly examined the chart for any anomaly. His eyes went wide when he found one. Patient, Naruto Uzumaki. Age, 6. Height, 3 feet 9 inches. Hair color, blonde. Eye color, blue. Chakra levels, Hokage. This must be a mistake. Run the test again. Hiruzen said as he returned the chart. Forgive me, Hokage-sama, but we have. This is the 20th time on 4 different machines. The doctor said in an almost frightened tone. He had never seen such chakra levels in any ninja. Hiruzen froze at this. Could it be possible? Naruto was the Jinchuuriki of the Kyuubi, but that shouldn't bring his chakra levels up to Hokage levels at the age of 6. Even Kushina's levels weren't that high at Naruto's age. Could it be because of the Yandame's seal? Jiraiya had said that it also acted as a filter for the Kyuubi's chakra. He explained that once a week a small portion of the beast's chakra would be purified before mixing with Naruto's. Could it be that that small portion was enough to bring Naruto's levels up this high? It was the only answer that made any sense. He couldn't help but to wear a small smile as he exited the building. believing that if anyone could surpass the yandere, it was Naruto. At Naruto's apartment. Naruto walked into his beat-up-looking apartment and locked the door behind him. His apartment was on the small side, but in Naruto's opinion the balcony made up for it. The paint on the walls was chipping and stained in the places that weren't covered in graffiti, but that was covered by dozens of posters of movies he's never seen because he wasn't allowed in the movie theater. His furniture had seen its best days long before Naruto had bought it. His bed had more holes and springs sticking out of it than there were inside of it. But he didn't mind any of that. This was his home and he'd make the best out of it. Naruto walked into his small kitchen to make himself some ramen before he figured out how he was going to start training. That's when he noticed a small green scroll that was laying in the center of his table. Naruto looked confusedly around his small apartment, wondering how someone got in here and why they left a scroll for him. He picked up the scroll and opened it. 6 a.m. Physical training. 8 a.m. Taijutsu training. 9 a.m. Ninjutsu training. 10 a.m. 3:00 p.m. Academy/Library if kicked out. 4 p.m. Chakra control. 6 p.m. Weapons training. 7 p.m. Kenjutsu training. 8 p.m. Hyuinjutsu training. 9 p.m. Meditation. Naruto was surprised by the scroll's contents. He had just been wondering how he should train, and here was the answer. He figured that it was the Hokage that had asked one of his ninja to break into his apartment and leave it after he had left the hospital. He was a bit annoyed that someone had broken in, but he got over when he saw the kick-ass training he had ahead of him. He unraveled the scroll a bit further and saw a few seals. It seemed familiar to him and he channeled a little chakra into it, following the instinct that told him to do so, and out popped more scrolls. All of which were D-ranked elemental jutsus. There were a few for each element. Excitedly, he pumped chakra into the other 3 seals. One was a wooden bakken, the other held sealing supplies, and the last was kunai, shuriken, and a few books on taijutsu and kenjutsu styles, hyuinjutsu, chakra control exercise, and a book called 101 Things That a Shinobi Need to Know. His schedule outlining what he was going to be doing for his physical training was also in the pile. Naruto was bubbling with excitement as he stared at the small pile of new training supplies that had gathered on his table. Naruto checked his clock and saw that it was only a little past 4, so he quickly sealed everything back up, not even thinking about how he knew how to do it, and took off to a nearby training field with his new sealing supplies, bakken, and the scrolls for chakra control, taijutsu and kenjutsu styles, and a scroll on how to meditate. He blew right past the hidden Kakashi right above his doorway. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask, happy that his little brother was happy with the training schedule he had laid out for him. He wanted Naruto to practice both Minato and Kushina's abilities because Naruto was the legacy of them both. He was the last Uzumaki and the last Namikaze. He deserved to be properly taught. He may have used the Rasengan, but that wasn't enough to protect him from everything. After all, you can't surpass someone as strong as Naruto's father with one technique. You have to be a well-rounded ninja, and Kakashi wanted to help Naruto become a well-rounded ninja, that way he could achieve his dream. After all, Sensei wanted the same thing. Naruto. Naruto was walking through the crowded market to get to the training ground. He always walked this path when he went to the training ground, but something was different. People still glared at him as he walked by, but for some reason it seemed heavier. The glares had the same amount of hatred for him and animosity. It all looked the same as always. However, to Naruto, it felt like a heavy weight had been placed on his shoulders. He would flinch at every loud noise, ready to fight or flee at the drop of a hat. His palms were sweating furiously as he felt waves of anxiety when someone would come a little too close for his liking. His eyes were darting furiously, taking note of everything: threats, escape routes, what could be used as a weapon, and what he could use to delay/distraction if someone attacked him. Naruto was having a panic attack, though he did not know it. He was taking shallow breaths, struggling to calm his pounding heart. Suddenly, it became too much for the boy as he broke out into a flat-out sprint away from the crowded market. He knocked over a cabbage cart, but he ignored the man's cries. He just had to get away. Naruto didn't slow down until he had reached the secluded training ground, after he stopped he was racking his brain trying to figure out what had happened to him. Naruto had never been that nervous, he had almost been petrified with fear that someone was going to try and harm him. Taking deep breaths he calmed himself. I guess it may be harder to put it behind me than I thought. Naruto thought sadly, he desperately wanted what happened to him to stay in the past, but it seemed like it had left a bigger impression on him than he had originally thought. However, he wouldn't tell anyone about the panic attacks. He would rather deal with them for the rest of his life than have the only two people that treated him with kindness look at him like everyone else. Maybe training will help. He muttered to himself as he grabbed the chakra control scroll and began reading. Despite his loud and ADD ways, Naruto was a complete bookworm. Not many people knew this, but reading was one of Naruto's few escapes from the harsh reality that was his life. Because books would never glare at him. They never denied him his right to exist for reasons unknown to him. No, books just simply wanted to be read. It didn't matter by who. Naruto absorbed the knowledge from the first chapter of the scroll, the rest was blocked by some sort of seal, faster than any sponge. The first chapter was detailing the leaf chakra control exercise and the several stages of the exercise. First off, he needed a leaf, and thanks to the forest he found one fairly easily. The first step was to get it to stick to the user's forehead with the use of chakra. The book said that this step only took an hour or two at most to master for children his age. Sticking the leaf to his forehead, Naruto began to channel chakra to the point of contact. Much to his surprise, the leaf blew away from his head the moment he dropped his hand, as if it was being blown away by a hurricane before burning up due to intense chakra. Naruto blinked slowly in confusion, the scroll certainly didn't say anything about that. In mild annoyance, he grabbed another leaf and got the same result. In annoyance he grabbed another, then another, then another. He got the same result every time and he was starting to get angry. How was this a basic skill? This was freaking impossible. 30 minutes later he was sighing to himself as he went to grab another leaf, but noticed a small pebble next to the leaf he had been aiming for. Ignoring the leaf, Naruto picked up the pebble and examined it thoughtfully. If it works with a leaf, it should work with a rock, right? He asked himself as he placed the pebble on the tip of his finger before channeling a bit of chakra and aimed it at a nearby tree. As expected, the pebble blew off his fingertip. However, what Naruto didn't expect was for the pebble to travel through the tree, nor did he expect to hear a loud "eep" before a small girl tumbled out of the bushes a foot away from where the pebble had passed. Naruto blinked in confusion, a little bothered that he was being spied on, but then he recognized the girl. Hinata got up and looked at Naruto in embarrassment. She had been spying on Naruto since he arrived at the clearing. She was making sure Naruto was okay. She saw him in the crowded market and saw he looked incredibly afraid. When she saw him take off running, she followed and ditched her guard Ko. Naruto took in Hinata's appearance. She wore her usual beige jacket that was a size or two too big and black shinobi pants with matching. However, Naruto was paying more attention to the white bandages that were wrapped around her head where it had busted open. Hayashi had chosen for Hinata to get stitches instead of ninja medical healing because he was proud of his daughter. He made the bandages and stitches badges of honor because she had been unafraid to stand up to two Chunin ninja to protect someone. He had been slightly annoyed that it was the village Jinchuuriki, but he would take it. Naruto felt immense guilt as he looked at Hinata's bandages, remembering how hurt she had been when she tried to save him. Hinata was blushing furiously as Naruto looked at her intently, his blue eyes taking in every detail. "Why?" he asked in a hushed whisper. Hinata looked up in confusion. What?" she asked. "Why did you try to save me?" Naruto asked his full question. Hinata blushed and began to play with her fingers, a nervous habit she had developed. Because I didn't want them to hurt you and Naruto-kun. She stuttered out before looking down at the ground in shame. "I'm as sorry that I couldn't save you," she said in an upset tone, sounding close to tears. She was angry with herself that she hadn't been able to do more. She looked up at Naruto, who looked as if he was questioning everything he knew about his life, with a worried expression. Did they hurt you?" she asked, remembering the words the cruel Uchihas had said. A tormented look pasted over his face as Naruto looked down at the ground as well. Yes. He answered simply. Hinata felt like crying as her fears had been confirmed. Before she could stop herself, she asked, What did they do? Naruto kept looking at the ground, tears stinging at his eyes, but he kept his vow, bad things. He answered in a broken tone. A few upset tears leaked out Hinata's eyes. Despite being so young, Hinata knew what bad things were due to the fact she came from a clan of ninja clan that didn't shield their children from the horrors of the harsh life of the shinobi. Without thinking about it, she crossed the distance and gave Naruto the hug he desperately needed. All she knew was that Naruto was practically radiating sadness and she wanted it to stop. She didn't have romantic feelings for Naruto. She was 6 years old. That was years too soon for her to even think about boys in that way. But Hinata was a kind soul. When she saw sadness, especially in Naruto, she wanted it to stop, and the only way she could think to plug the sadness was through physical contact. Naruto was dumbfounded by the sensation of another person wrapping their arms around him. He could count on one hand how many times he had been hugged in his life, and all of them were from Gigi. He never would have thought he would ever hug a girl. They were Aiki, but Hinata was less so. Naruto was so shocked by the hug that he couldn't even think to have a panic attack or feel like he was going to be attacked. Partly because Hinata was his own age, and while he was bullied by kids his age he was never beaten, but mainly it was because somehow he felt like he could trust Hinata. He saw firsthand that she was willing to take a beating to save him, something he's never had done for him, that he knew of. Timidly Naruto wrapped his arms around Hinata and he just enjoyed the soothing contact. He felt his fears and worries diminish and felt something he'd never experienced before. Acceptance. Maybe he got it from Gigi and Irika-sensei, but he was always afraid that if he messed up too big then they would hate him. He never had unconditional acceptance before and he found he rather liked the feeling. They stood hugging each other for several minutes before Naruto broke the hug, but he still had his hands on her shoulders. Thank you, he said in an honest tone. Hinata blushed but mumbled a "You're welcome." Naruto dropped his arms and smiled slightly. After a few awkward seconds he said, So Hinata-chan, would you like to train with me? He asked in a hesitant tone, not really sure how to ask or what he should do now. Hinata hesitated, then nodded with a blush. I would enjoy that Naruto-kun. She responded, not even thinking about how distressed her guard Ko was going to be thinking he lost her. Naruto smiled before taking her hand and leading her to the tree that he had stashed the scrolls and other training equipment. I'm practicing chakra control right now. I'm doing the leaf training exercise, but I'm having some trouble with it, he explained as he presented the scroll to her. Hinata took the scroll gratefully, not telling Naruto that she already knew how to do the exercise, not only due to her clan but they had mastered the exercise last week in class. Naruto didn't know this because his teacher had kicked him out for some vague reason. Thank you Naruto-kun. I saw that you were having some trouble. Would you like my help? Hinata asked, hoping she wouldn't offend her new friend. Naruto smiled sheepishly. You saw that? I guess you did when I almost shot you with that pebble. Anyways, you can help me? Really? Naruto asked. Hinata nodded before activating her Byakugan. Naruto awed at seeing the dojutsu. Wow. Your eyes look so cool. What do they do? He asked in an excited tone. Hinata blushed slightly at the praise at her Kekei Genkai but explained what her eyes could do. This is my Kekei Genkai, the Byakugan. It allows me to see all around me and people's chakra network. Then I can use my C-clan's taijutsu style, the gentle fist, to close an enemy's tenketsu. She explained with pride. Most people didn't know this, but she was one of the earliest Hyubas to activate their Kekei Genkai. Naruto wowed again before saying, Thanks for helping me, but how exactly are you going to? Naruto wondered. I am going to see how much C chakra you're using and tell you if you're using too much or too little. She explained further. Naruto nodded and grabbed another leaf before plastering it to his forehead. Ready? He asked and started to mold chakra when she nodded. Hinata could only gape as she truly paid attention to Naruto's chakra coils. Earlier she had just been showing what her Kekei Genkai looked like and couldn't see Naruto's chakra network. He had more chakra than anyone she had ever seen. And she had once looked at the Hokage's chakra coils before. She was so shocked that she completely forgot that she was supposed to be telling Naruto how much chakra to use. "Hinata-chan? Everything okay?" he asked in a concerned tone. Hinata resembled a fish that was gasping for air, and that worried Naruto. Hinata nodded dumbly before breaking out of her stupor. "Why yes, I'm fine." You're using too much chakra," she said, awe still evident in her tone. "How much too much?" Naruto asked. About a 10,000 times too much," she said, causing Naruto to sweat dropped. "Really? That much? How about now?" he asked as he drastically lowered the chakra concentration. Still too much, but you're only about 800 times too much now." Naruto lowered it again, and again before Hinata said that Naruto was using little enough chakra for the leaf to stick. He dropped his hand that was holding up the leaf, and amazingly it didn't shoot about 100 miles an hour. "Sweet. Thank you, Hinata-chan," Naruto exclaimed with the leaf still sticking to him, ecstatic that he finally got the blasted leaf to stick, and it was all thanks to Hinata and her special eyes. Hinata smiled sweetly at him, happy that she could have helped. "Why, you're welcome, and Naruto-kun." Naruto beamed before grabbing a nearby leaf and presented said leaf to her. "Now you try." Hinata reached out to accept the leaf, but before she could, the two of them heard a very loud, "Hinata-sama." Hinata turned around and saw it was her absolutely furious guard Ko. "Hinata-sama, step away from the monster." He yelled it. He crossed the distance in seconds and grabbed Hinata by the wrist and yanked her away from Naruto. Hinata looked up at Ko in confusion, but realization dawned on her when she realized that she was referring to Naruto. Hinata yanked her wrist out of Ko's hand and glared up at her guard. To say that Ko was surprised by the action would be the understatement of the century. Ko had never seen the kind, gentle Hinata glare at anyone. Heck, he didn't even think she knew how to glare. Much less sending such a harsh and angry one like she was giving him right now. "Ko-san. I would greatly appreciate it if you would not call Naruto-kun such a cruel name," Hinata said in a mature tone, not stuttering at all except for when she tripped up over the word appreciate. Ko was starting to question if this was really Hinata-sama at all at this point. Hinata could never go a full sentence without stuttering up a storm, and don't even get him started on the commanding tone. She almost sounded like the Hyuga heiress like she was. Naruto looked at Hinata in surprise as well before a small smile graced his lips. "It's okay, Hinata-chan. I'm used to it by now," he said, and earned a sad look from Hinata. "But Naruto-kun." Naruto held up a hand, seeming ages older than he looked. "It's okay. I guess you should head home so your family won't be worried," he said with a smile. Ko was beginning to think that someone had placed a jinjutsu on him. First the terribly shy Hinata stood up to him and glared. Now the demon brat was acting concerned about the Hyuga heiress. What in Kama's name was going on here? Was he under some genjutsu? Apparently not after he disrupted his chakra. "Why yes, Hinata-sama. You are late for training," he said, trying to hurry the conversation along so he wouldn't get in more trouble with the main branch. Hinata gave Naruto one last look before nodding that she was ready to leave. The two of them left and Naruto continued on with his training for several more hours. Like the scroll in his apartment said, he started on his kenjutsu training with his new Bakken. He decided to start with the kenjutsu style called the Whirlpool of Blades, the Uzumaki kenjutsu style, but Naruto didn't know that, and Naruto took to it like a fish to water. He practically mastered the basic katas of the style in the hour he practiced. Naruto couldn't explain it, but the movements just felt natural to him. Like his body already knew what to do. He practiced with the shuriken and kunai for a while. He aimed at trees and leaves that were falling. His throws were dead on with still objects, but he missed every other leaf. After that he started his fuinjutsu training, and there wasn't an analogy to describe how quickly he picked up on the art. He took to it better than a duck to water, faster than a bird took to the skies, faster than an Uzumaki. Naruto absorbed the knowledge in the first chapter and understood it fully, something that was almost unheard of except for the Uzumaki, and Naruto had surpassed their natural aptitude for the art. He had blew past the seals that tried to prevent from reading ahead as he read. He didn't learn how to make seals in the scroll, but learned the ideas behind Fuinjutsu. Lastly, Naruto began his meditation. He took up the lotus position and tried to enter his mindscape like the scroll instructed him to. However, he met unexpected resistance. Every time he tried to enter his mindscape, he was greeted by a large white wall that prevented him from entering, and despite his every attempt to break through, he failed each time no matter what he did. He spent the last hour either trying to break the wall or searching the scroll for answers but found none. He figured if he didn't find an answer in the library, then he would ask Gigi about the mysterious wall. After the final hour, he packed everything up before heading back to his apartment. With Hinata during training. Hinata sat in her clan's dojo waiting for a lecture from her father. Holly was disappointed in her for not taking her training seriously even though she was behind on her gentle fist training. Then he would look at her with those mean, disappointed eyes, almost similar to the ones Naruto received, and he would insult her and call her a failure after an intense training session. After that, she would cry and seek the comfort of Naruto's presence. Though now, if she was lucky, she wouldn't have to hide behind walls or bushes. Maybe Naruto would allow her to train with him again, or maybe he would even give her a hug like the one she gave him earlier. Hinata blushed, remembering how nice Naruto had felt. She wasn't sure why she was blushing, probably embarrassment at her boldness. Her father walked in and gave her a stern look. Hinata mentally braced herself for the lecture that was bound to come. "Where were you for afternoon training?" Hayashi asked, already knowing the answer but wanted to hear it from his daughter. I was training with Naruto-kun, she answered, already wincing to be prepared for the harsh tone. "I see. Very well," Hisashi said, enjoying the confused look on his daughter's face. Ko had informed him that Hinata went missing for an hour under his care. He also told him in great detail how Hinata had took a stand when he had insulted Naruto after he found her again. If he didn't know that Ko was too afraid to lie to him, he would have never believed him. However, when he remembered that Hinata had courageously attacked two Chunin in the boy's defense, maybe it wasn't that hard to believe after all. Hayashi couldn't express how happy he was that Hinata was finally standing up to someone. He had been trying to get her to do that since her mother died. He had been trying to expel the crippling kindness in her through intense training that left her battered and bruised. He tried to verbally attacking her when the training didn't work. If it did anything, it made her more timid and withdrawn. He was beginning to run out of ideas. Everything was failing and she was in danger of losing her title as the heiress if something didn't happen soon. It turns out that all she needed was someone to stand up for. Did he wish it was someone other than the village's Jinchuuriki? Yes, but he much preferred her spending time with him than her staying the timid, unconfident, shy failure that she was now. Hinata blinked several times, wondering if her ears had deceived her. Father? Why you're not mad? She asked, stuttering worse because she was afraid that it was a cruel joke to worsen her self-confidence. Hayashi smiled lightly. No. If you had been doing anything other than training and if you didn't stand up to Ko, then I would be very angry. I assumed that you wished to continue to train with Naruto? Hayashi asked and received an eager nod from Hinata. You may continue to train with Naruto on the conditions of you must not fall further behind in your gentle fist training than you already are, and you must ditch Ko to do so. Hayashi said. He was impressed with Hinata's ability to lose her guard. Ko had been specifically chosen to guard Hinata because he was incredibly talented for a branch member, only seconded to his late brother's son, Niji. Not only was he talented, but being able to get away from a Hyuga was no easy task in itself. Even when he was a child, he could never manage to get away from his guard for 5 minutes, let alone almost an hour. He wanted her to train the skill. It would be invaluable for her shinobi career. Sure, it was dangerous for her to go around unattended, but Hayashi was confident that nothing would happen to Hinata as long as Naruto was around. If he was truly Minato's son, then he would hold off any attackers long enough for help to arrive. Hinata tried to keep her joy from being seen, but she failed when a full-blown smile was plastered on her face. Hayashi blinked in surprise. He hadn't seen Hinata this happy since before her mother died. Hinata bowed low. Thank you, father, she said without a stutter. Hayashi smiled internally before nodding. Since you missed today's training, do 10 laps around the courtyard. Hinata jumped up and complied. And at the end of the day, a small grin could still be seen on her lips. The next day, Naruto was the first one in the classroom. He was feeling slightly exhausted from the borderline insane workout he had done that morning. When he had actually read what the physical training entailed, he had nearly blenched. It started off with 5 laps around the village, then 50 pull-ups that were immediately followed by a 100 push-ups. Then the same number of sit-ups, crunches, squats, then a variety of other exercises that he didn't know how to describe other than they were incredibly difficult and painful. It seems that whoever gave him the workout knew about his incredible stamina. He finished on time, then he instantly started on his taijutsu training. He decided to start with the cheetah style first. It focused on lighting fast attacks and unpredictably. Right up his alley. It had gone well, but not compared to how well and fast he had learned the other things. He had an extreme aptitude for, but there were times that the movements felt awkward. On some stances, his instincts were telling him to do something different from what the scroll before him told him to do. He was confused about that, but he did his best to ignore the instincts because he knew the stances were correct. After that was ninjutsu, his favorite. He had grabbed all the scrolls, but in the end he had decided to practice the Academy 3. He desperately wanted to be able to shoot lightning out of his fingertips or breath fire, but he knew that they weren't needed to graduate. Maybe he could get extra credit for them, but they weren't priority. He practiced the henge jutsu and the kawarimi jutsu. He decided to try the clone jutsu for tomorrow because how hard could it be? He practiced and fine-tuned the henge jutsu, trying to add more small details to make it perfect. It's the solid version, but it wasn't perfect yet, but didn't make much progress with kawarimi. He figured it was his chakra control and decided he would train that extra hard today. After he finished training, he headed back home to clean up and go to school. He had another panic attack on the way to the academy, so he deduced that the cause of the attacks were people, so he sat in the secluded corner in the back of the class while reading about the founders of Koona. He had gotten the book from Iruka-sensei before the start of class. Iruka was worried about Naruto. He had heard that he was kidnapped over the weekend, but that was it. He didn't know by whom, nor did he know what happened to Naruto during the time he was with his captors, but it had obviously traumatized the boy. Naruto was always loud and borderline obnoxious, desperate for any kind of attention, but now he was silent. He sat in the back of the classroom even though every other seat was available and tried to avoid attention like it was the plaque. It was like his personality did a complete 180. Iruka was going to ask if everything was okay, but children began to file in and take their seats. Iruka decided to ask Naruto what happened after class. None of the students noticed the difference in Naruto's personality switch. They all ignored Naruto anyways. Naruto was still reading when he heard a soft voice ask him, "See, can I sit H here?" Hinata asked. Naruto looked up from his book and smiled at Hinata, as sure. He answered. Truth be told, he half expected for Hinata to avoid him during the day so that no one would know that she was friends with the demon. Not that he minded, he was just happy to have a friend. Even if she didn't want it to be known. Hinata smiled gratefully as she took the seat next to Naruto and paid attention to the lesson that was beginning. Iruka was talking about the format of genin teams and how teamwork played an important role. Class went by rather quickly. Some students were sending questioning looks at Naruto now. He usually disrupted a lesson at least once, but today he had been silent. They also noticed that Hinata was sitting by him, which confused them. Who would want to be friends with the freak? Didn't her parents tell her to stay away from him like theirs did? It was time for their lunch break and Hinata and Naruto sat underneath the tree with the swing. They sat as far away from the other kids as they could, that way Naruto could eat in peace. Hinata was kind enough to share some of her lunch. When she saw that all Naruto had was cold ramen, Naruto thanked her repeatedly and promised that he would bring something for her tomorrow. So Dobe, it seems like you finally learned your place? It's about time. I'm glad the lessons that my cousins taught you took. Sasuke said behind Naruto, commenting on how he was silent during class. When Sasuke had told his father that he had lost to the Dobe, he made Sasuke train intensely all night. If it wasn't for his mother's herbs, He wouldn't be able to stand, and even with them he barely could days later. But before the intense training session, two Chunin of his clan had approached him and asked if the rumors were true. He had been reluctant to confirm them, but when he did, they promised him that Naruto would pay for embarrassing their clan. Sasuke didn't know what they did to Naruto, but he was glad that he learned a lesson in humility. All of his yapping in class was annoying, and he couldn't surpass his brother if there were distractions like Naruto. Naruto froze. Did he just hear what he thought he heard? Did this Uchiha team have the audacity to say that he was glad that he was tortured for hours on end? Naruto felt uncontrollable amounts of pure unadulterated rage sweep through him. Hinata looked appalled at what Sasuke had just said. She didn't know exactly what happened to Naruto at the hands of his cousins, but she had a vague idea. Naruto had never been this angry. He wanted to beat the Uchiha down until he had the same texture as pudding. He blamed Sasuke for what happened to him. If Sasuke hadn't told anyone that he lost, or if he had been better and beaten him, then Naruto wouldn't had to endure hell at the hands of his cousins. Naruto was getting up to beat the living daylights out of Sasuke when Hinata placed a hand lightly on his wrist. Naruto looked at Hinata with an angry/confused look. He was slightly annoyed that she was trying to stop him from giving the Uchiha a good pounding, but he knew she must have a reason for it. Hinata blushed slightly before saying, "Don't Naruto-kun. He's not worth it." Naruto wanted to argue, to say that the team deserved to have his face smashed in, but if he thought about it, she was right. Not only would his family come after him again if he knocked Sasuke into next week, but he would disappoint Hinata, and Sasuke simply wasn't worth that. He also knew that Hinata didn't mean that when she said he wasn't worth it. She probably meant some deep reason, like he would be no better than them if he did, but Naruto was far more concerned Hinata's opinion of him. Naruto sat back down with a huff, sending Sasuke a glare as he did so. Hinata smiled at him before offering him a cinnamon bun that she had snuck in her lunch, and Naruto accepted. They were both totally ignoring the fuming Sasuke. How dare they say that he's not worth something? Who did these two losers think they were? He was an Uchiha, they were dirt underneath his feet. His father had all but beaten the ideals that the Uchiha clan were Kami's greatest gift to ever be bestowed onto mankind. They were Konoha's elite, and that everyone else that wasn't an Uchiha was trash that should only be associated with if it couldn't be avoided. His older brother tried to tell him that the clan's ideals were wrong, but Sasuke would have none of it. His older brother was as strong as he was because he was an Uchiha, and one day Sasuke was going to surpass him. Sasuke clenched his fists in anger. Before he knew it, he flung himself at Naruto. Nobody insults him and gets away with it. He was an Uchiha. He was the best, his father told him so. Sasuke tackled Naruto from behind, causing him to tumble over. Naruto landed on his back and Sasuke was above him. Sasuke threw a punch at Naruto's face, but Naruto had grabbed his wrist and made him hit the ground next to his head. Naruto punched upwards and hit Sasuke in the mouth before he placed a foot on his stomach and threw him over. Both boys scrabbled to get up first to attack one another. Sasuke had somehow regained his balance first and launched another fist at him, trying to repay Naruto for the punch. However, before the punch could make contact with Naruto's cheek, a blue-haired girl jumped in front of the attack. The blow knocked Hinata sideways. She had tried to stop the two boys from fighting since there were no teachers around that could see the fight, but she had jumped in too late and got hit instead. Naruto saw red as he glared bloody murder at the Uchiha before him and went to pound him into next year, but Hinata had grabbed his wrist again. She looked up at him with pleading eyes. She knew that Naruto could get hurt again if he beat the team up again. Please don't F-fight Naruto-kun," she asked in a pleading voice. Naruto clenched his fist in anger. He glared at the Uchiha. Oh, how he wanted to completely demolish Sasuke for harming his one friend. But what do you do when said friend is asking you not to hurt the person that hurt her? "You're lucky Hinata-chan doesn't want me to hurt you, but if you ever hurt her again, I'll kill you," Naruto said in a threatening tone. His voice growling deeper until it was almost a growl. It was almost inhuman. Hinata-chan protected Sasuke this time from his wrath, but he would not let Hinata get hurt by the blasted Uchiha again. Sasuke felt a shiver go down his spine at the threat. Naruto said the words with complete and utter certainty. It was as if there would be no doubt about his death at Naruto's hands. Swallowing his fears, like his father instructed him to, Sasuke scoffed, "Yeah right dope." He kicked over Hinata's lunch and spilled its few content on the grass. Just you try it. Who knows, maybe I'll have my cousins teach you another lesson on where your place is freak. Sasuke insulted before cockily walking off. If it weren't for Hinata's hand firmly on his wrist, he would have murdered the team then and there. After he left, Hinata let go of Naruto's wrist and he helped Hinata clean up her lunch before they did the same, but before they entered Hinata said, I am sorry for stopping you but Hinata began, fearing that Naruto would be mad at her, but Naruto stopped her with a hand again. Don't worry about it, Hinata-chan, you were right. Trash like him isn't worth it, but if he ever hurts you again, I will kill him. He said in a tone that made him sound like an adult making a promise. Hinata gave Naruto a shy look. She was slightly nervous that Naruto was saying that he was going to kill someone, but at the same time she was thankful that he was willing to go to such lengths to protect her. Is your cheek okay? He asked, dropping the tone before giving the relieved looking and nodding Hinata a lopsided grin. Do you think you could train with me after school today? He asked. Hinata hesitated then nodded. She was already forming plans to ditch Ko. Naruto smiled before grabbing her hand and lead both of them back to class.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.